Rioplatense Spanish is a dialect of the Spanish language spoken mainly in the areas in and around the Rio de la Plata Basin of Argentina and Uruguay. Some features of this dialect are also shared with the varieties of Spanish spoken in Eastern Bolivia and Chile. This dialect is often spoken with an intonation resembling that of Neapolitan Italian, but not always. The usual word employed to name the Spanish language in this region is castellano and seldom español. Note that while this article refers to Rioplatense Spanish as a single dialect, there are distinguishable differences among the varieties spoken in Argentina, Bolivia and in Uruguay, as described below. Rioplatense is also referred to as River Plate Spanish or Argentine Spanish. Location: Rioplatense is mainly based in the cities of Buenos Aires, Rosario, Santa Fe, La Plata and Mar del Plata in Argentina, and Montevideo in Uruguay, the most populated cities in the dialectal area, along with the respective suburbs and the areas in between. This regional form of Spanish is also found in other areas, not geographically close but culturally influenced by those population centers. Rioplatense is the standard in audiovisual media in Argentina and Uruguay. To the north and northeast exists the hybrid Rioplatense Portuguese. Influences on the language. The Spaniards brought the language to the area during the Spanish colonization in the region. Originally part of the Viceroyalty of Peru, the Rio de la Plata Basin had its status lifted to Viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata in 1776, until the massive immigration to the region started in the 1870s. The language of the Rio de la Plata had virtually no influence from other languages and varied mainly by localisms. Argentines and Uruguayans often state that the populations, like those of the United States and Canada, comprise people of relatively recent European descent, the largest immigrant groups coming from Italy and Spain. European immigration, several languages, and especially Italian, influenced the Criollo Spanish of the time. Because of the diversity of settlers and immigrants to Argentina and Uruguay, 1870 to 1890, mainly Spanish, Basque, Galician, Northern Italian, Portuguese speakers and some from France, Germany, and other European countries. 1910 to 1945, again from Spain, southern Italy, Portugal and in smaller numbers from across Europe. Jewish immigration, mainly from Russia and Poland from the 1910s until after World War II, was also significant. English speakers from Britain and Ireland were not as numerous as the Italians but were influential in industry, business, education and agriculture. English immigrants were influential within the upper middle class. Influence of indigenous populations in Argentina. European settlement decimated Native American populations before 1810, and also during the expansion into Patagonia. However, the interaction between Spanish and several of the native languages has left visible traces. Words from Guarani, Quechua, and others were incorporated into the local form of Spanish. Some words of Amerindian origin commonly used in Rioplatense Spanish are from Quechua. Guacha, the term for the native cowboys of the Pampas Gaucho, may be related. Pocaclo, popcorn in Argentina from Guarani. Porero, popcorn in Uruguay, Paraguay and some Argentine provinces. See influences on the Spanish language for a more comprehensive review of borrowings into all dialects of Spanish. Linguistic features. Vocabulary. Differences between dialects of Spanish are numerous. About 9,000 Rioplatense words are not used or, in many cases, even understood elsewhere. These include many terms from the basic vocabulary, such as words for fruits, garments, foodstuffs, car parts, etc., as well as local slang. Rioplatense vocabularies continue to diverge from Peninsular Spanish. Rioplatense Spanish tends to borrow technical words from American English, while Peninsular Spanish tends to borrow or calque them from British English or from French. Phonology. Rioplatense Spanish distinguishes itself from other dialects of Spanish by the pronunciation of certain consonants. Like many other dialects, Rioplatense features yerismo. The sounds represented by l and y have fused into one. Thus, in Rioplatense, shake-io, he fell down, is homophonous with shake-alo, he became silent. This merged phoneme is generally pronounced as a post-alveolar fricative, either voiced in the central and western parts of the dialect region or voiceless in and around Buenos Aires. As in most American dialects, also, Rioplatense Spanish has cesio. That is, casa is homophonous with casa. Cesio is common to other dialects of Spanish in Latin America, Canarian Spanish, Andalusian Spanish and Portuguese. In popular speech, the fricative per-second has a tendency to become aspirated before another consonant or simply in all-syllable final positions in less educated speech. This change may be realized only at the word level, or it may also cross word boundaries. That is, esto es lo mismo. This is the same is pronounced something like bud in las aguilas azules, the blue eagles. The second in las aguilas might remain as no consonant follows, or become. The pronunciation is largely an individual choice. The phoneme x is never glottalized to in the Atlantic coast. This phenomenon is common to other coastal dialects in Latin American Spanish, as well as Caribbean, Canarian, and Andalusian dialects, but not in Uruguayan dialect. Uruguayan speakers always realize it as, like people in northern and central Spain. Argentine speakers realize it both as and. Uruguayans never realize it as instead of, but as a possible phonetic realization of per-second, when it is followed by two or more consonants, or at the end of a phrase. In some areas, speakers tend to drop the final r sound in verb infinitives and the final per-second in most words. This elision is considered a feature of uneducated speakers in some places, but it is widespread in others, at least in rapid speech. Aspiration of per-second, together with loss of final r and some common instances of diphthong simplification, tend to produce a noticeable simplification of the syllable structure, giving Rioplatense informal speech a distinct fluid consonant-vowel rhythm. See quere and 8. Yo no te voy a parar. If you want to go, then go. I'm not going to stop you. Intonation. Preliminary research has shown that Rioplatense Spanish, and particularly the speech of the city of Buenos Aires, has intonation patterns that resemble those of Italian dialects. This correlates well with immigration patterns. Argentina has received huge numbers of Italian settlers since the 19th century, according to a study conducted by National Scientific and Technical Research Council of Argentina. Buenos Aires and Rosario residents speak with an intonation most closely resembling Neapolitan. The researchers note this as a relatively recent phenomenon, starting in the beginning of the 20th century with the main wave of southern Italian immigration. Before that, the Porteño accent was more similar to that of Spain, especially Andalusia. Pronouns and verb conjugation. One of the features of the Argentine and Uruguayan speaking style is the vocio, the usage of the pronoun vos from the second person singular instead of two. In other Spanish-speaking regions where vocio is used, it is typically considered a non-standard lower-class sociolectic or regional variant, whereas in Argentina and Uruguay, vocio is standard. Vos is used with forms of the verb that resemble those of the second-person plural in traditional Peninsular Spanish. The second-person plural pronoun, which is vosotros in Spain, is replaced with ustedes in Rioplatense, as in most other Latin American dialects. While usted is the formal second-person singular pronoun, its plural ustedes has a neutral connotation and can be used to address friends and acquaintances as well as in more formal occasions. Ustedes takes a grammatically third-person plural verb. As an example, see the conjugation table for the verb amar in the present tense, indicative mode. Ustedes is used throughout all of Latin America for both the familiar and formal. In Spain, outside of Andalusia, it is used only in formal speech for the second-person plural. Although apparently there is just a stress shift, the origin of such a stress is the loss of the diphthong of the ancient vos inflection from vos amis to vos amis. This can be better seen with the verb to be, from vos sois to vos sos. In vowel-alternating verbs like perder and mora, the stress shift also triggers a change of the vowel in the root. For the IR verbs, the peninsular vosotros forms end in is, so there is no diphthong to simplify, and Rioplatense vos employs the same form. Instead of two vives, vos vivis; instead of two vines, vos venus. The imperative forms for vos are identical to the plural imperative forms in Peninsular minus the final d. Hablar más fuerte, por favor. Speak louder, please. Come un poco de torta. Eat some cake. Veni para acá. Come over here. The plural imperative uses the ustedes form. As for the subjunctive forms of vos verbs, while they tend to take the to conjugation, some speakers do use the classical vos conjugation, employing the vosotros form minus the I in the final diphthong. Many consider only the two subjunctive forms to be correct. Espero que ves or espero que vias. I hope you can see. Lo que quieras or lo que quieras, queries, whatever you want. In the preterite, an s is sometimes added, for instance pedists. This corresponds to the classical vos conjugation found in literature. Compare Iberian Spanish form vosotros perditais. However, it is incorrect. Other verb forms coincide with to after the I is omitted. See salieris, if you went out. Usage in the old times, vos was used as a respectful term. In Rioplatense, as in most other dialects which employ vosio, this pronoun has become informal, supplanting the use of to. It is used especially for addressing friends and family members, but may also include most acquaintances, such as co-workers, friends of one's friends, etc. Usage of tenses. Although literary works use the full spectrum of verb inflections, in Rioplatense, the future tense tends to use a verbal phrase in the spoken language. This verb phrase is formed by the verb ir followed by the preposition a and the main verb in the infinitive. This resembles the English phrase to be going to plus infinitive verb. For example, creo que descansaré un poco, creo que voy a descansar un poco. Mañana me visitará mi madre, mañana mi Virginia a visitar mi vieja. La visitaré mañana, la voy a visitar mañana. The present perfect, just like pretérito anterior, is rarely used. The simple past replaces it. Juan no ha legado todavía, Juan no legó todavía. El torneo ha comenzado, el torneo empezó. Ellos no han votado, ellos no votaron. But, in the subjunctive mood, the present perfect is still widely used. No creo que lo hayan visto ya. Espero que lo hayas hecho In Buenos Aires, a reflexive form of verbs is often used, che bien, instead of bien, etc. Influence on Chilean Spanish. In Chilean Spanish there is plenty of lexical influence from the Argentine dialects, suggesting a masked prestige otherwise not expressed, since the image of Argentinian things is otherwise usually negative. Influences run across the different social strata of Chile. Argentine tourism in Chile during summer and Chilean tourism in Argentina would influence the speech of the upper class. The middle classes would have Argentine influences by watching football in cable television and by watching Argentine programs in the broadcast television. La Cuarta, a popular newspaper, regularly employs lunfardo words and expressions. Usually Chileans do not recognize the Argentine borrowings as such, claiming they are Chilean terms and expressions. The relation between Argentine dialects and Chilean Spanish would be one of asymmetric permeability, with Chilean Spanish adopting sayings of the Argentine variants but usually not the other way around.